The Vatican's secret archive was a place of legend, shrouded in mystery and sealed behind layers of bureaucracy. Few had ever been granted access, and those who had spoke of ancient manuscripts, cryptic texts, and knowledge that could shake the foundations of history. For years, I had fought to gain entry, sending request after request, each time met with polite but firm refusals. But then, unexpectedly, permission was granted. No explanation, no reasoning, just a simple letter stamped with the official seal of the Vatican. As I stepped through the towering oak doors, the scent of aged parchment and candle wax filled my nostrils. The air was thick with dust, the weight of history pressing down on me. Books lined the walls in endless rows, some bound in cracked leather, others in materials I couldn't quite identify. Dim lanterns flickered in the vast chamber, casting eerie shadows over the towering bookshelves. A robed figure emerged from the gloom, a frail, elderly archivist with piercing eyes that seemed to assess my very soul. "You have been granted access," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But there are things in these halls that were never meant to be found. Choose wisely." I nodded, suppressing my excitement, and moved deeper into the library. I ran my fingers along the spines of countless tomes, some inscribed with languages I didn't recognize. Every book here held a secret, but I was searching for one in particular: the records of the Vatican's most guarded ceremonies. I had heard whispers, stories of ancient rites involving the sarcophagi of long-dead popes, removed from their hidden crypts beneath the Basilica of St. Peter. Hours passed as I pored over manuscripts and documents, piecing together fragments of the truth. The ceremonies were real. Every year, at an undisclosed time, certain sarcophagi were taken from the Vatican's underground vaults and placed in the Basilica for ritual purposes. The texts were vague on the nature of these ceremonies, but the implications were chilling. There were mentions of processions held under moonlight, of whispered incantations in forgotten tongues, and of figures moving in the darkness when no one should have been there. Then, tucked away in the shadows of an old shelf, I found it, a tome that sent a shiver down my spine. It was bound in dark leather, its title embossed in gold, The Prophecies of St. Malachi. I had read about this book before, but I had never imagined I would see it with my own eyes. This manuscript was said to contain a list of every pope, from 1143 to the present. And according to legend, it ended with the final pope, after whom there would be no successor. My hands trembled as I opened the book, the pages brittle beneath my fingers. What was I about to uncover? Was this just an old superstition, or was there something far more sinister at play? A rustling sound broke the silence. I turned sharply, my pulse quickening. The archivist stood at the end of the aisle, watching me with unreadable eyes. "Some knowledge is better left untouched," he murmured before disappearing into the darkness. I swallowed hard and turned back to the book. Whatever lay within these pages, I was about to find out. Leonardo could still feel the weight of the Vatican guard's hand on his shoulder, a silent but firm reminder that some doors were never meant to be opened. The memory of the sarcophagus lingered in his mind, its ancient carvings, the eerie silence that surrounded it, and the whispers of something forbidden. The guards had stopped the man in the video, but Leonardo was determined to uncover the truth. His research led him deeper into the history of these mysterious coffins. Records were scarce, deliberately vague, but through contacts in the Vatican archives, he learned a shocking detail. Every year, these sarcophagi were transported from the depths of the Vatican's restricted library for a private ceremony. The bodies of past popes were said to rest within, yet rumors persisted that something unnatural occurred behind the locked doors of the basilica. His curiosity burning brighter than ever, Leonardo knew where he had to go next: the Vatican's secret archives. Getting inside was nearly impossible, but he had a contact: Father Matteo, an old acquaintance who had access to restricted texts. It took days of careful persuasion, but Matteo finally agreed to arrange a brief visit under the pretense of research. The moment Leonardo stepped into the archives, he felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. Dust-covered manuscripts lined the endless shelves, their spines whispering forgotten knowledge. Matteo led him past rows of books to a particular section, one that only a handful of scholars had ever glimpsed. "Here," Matteo whispered, sliding out a leather-bound volume. "This book might answer your questions, but some truths are better left undiscovered." Leonardo hesitated before opening it, sensing that the pages within would reveal something far more terrifying than he had ever imagined. Leonardo's hands trembled slightly as he turned the brittle pages of the ancient manuscript. The title read, Prophetia Sancti Malachii, the prophecy of Saint Malachi. He had heard of it before, a list of cryptic phrases predicting every pope from 1143 to the present day. But as he scanned the pages, his breath caught in his throat. The final entry was chillingly clear. Pope Francis was named along with a date this very month. But what followed was even more unsettling. There was no successor listed, only 2 Latin words in bold script. Dies Iudicii, Judgment Day. A wave of cold dread washed over him. Was this merely an ancient superstition, or had Malachi truly foreseen the end? If the prophecy was accurate, then the death of the current pope would mark the beginning of something far greater, a cataclysm beyond human understanding. Matteo, standing beside him, was pale. "This book was never meant to leave the archives," he whispered. "It has been hidden for centuries. Few even know of its existence." Leonardo clenched his fists. "Then why is it here? Why hasn't the Vatican destroyed it?" Matteo hesitated. "Because some believe it's the truth, and the church has been preparing." A distant sound echoed through the silent halls, a door creaking open, followed by the soft but deliberate footsteps of approaching guards. "We have to leave now," Matteo urged, grabbing Leonardo's arm. Leonardo had come searching for secrets, but he had found something far worse. And now someone knew he had seen it. Leonardo and Matteo barely had time to react before the heavy footsteps grew louder. The guards were closing in. Matteo motioned toward a narrow corridor at the back of the library. "This way," he whispered urgently. Leonardo clutched the manuscript tightly as they darted into the passage. The walls here were lined with shelves of forbidden texts, their titles worn away by time. The air smelled of old parchment and candle wax, thick with secrets hidden for centuries. As they moved deeper into the shadows, Matteo pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked a concealed wooden door. They slipped inside just as the guards entered the main hall behind them. Holding their breath, they listened as the men murmured to each other in Italian, their voices tense and questioning. "We're not safe here for long," Matteo whispered. "There's something you need to see." He led Leonardo down a spiraling stone staircase, deeper into the Vatican's underground chambers. The dim torches along the walls flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows on the ancient stones. At the bottom of the stairs, Matteo stopped before an iron gate. Behind it was a chamber filled with relics and objects of immense historical significance. In the center stood an altar, and on it lay another book, larger and more ornate than the one Leonardo had found. The cover was engraved with symbols Leonardo didn't recognize. "This," Matteo said, his voice barely above a whisper, "is the real reason the Vatican keeps the archives locked away. The prophecy is only a part of the truth. But this book contains the full history of what they've been hiding for centuries." Leonardo stepped closer, his heart pounding. He had come seeking knowledge, but he was beginning to realize some truths were never meant to be uncovered, seemed to shimmer in the dim torchlight. A sense of unease crept over him as he reached out to touch it. "Are you sure about this?" Matteo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Once we open it, there's no going back." Leonardo hesitated, then slowly lifted the heavy cover. The first page was written in a language he couldn't recognize, but as his eyes scanned the text, the meaning became clear in his mind. The book spoke of an ancient order that had existed long before the Vatican itself, guardians of a prophecy that foretold the end of an era. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Distant bells tolled, their chimes distorted and ominous. Matteo grabbed Leonardo's arm. "We need to leave, now." A deep rumbling echoed through the chamber. The iron gate they had passed through slammed shut behind them. The torches flickered wildly, as if reacting to an unseen force. Leonardo clutched the manuscript tighter, his breath shallow. Then, from the darkness, a voice unlike any they had ever heard resonated through the chamber. It was neither human nor entirely real, a whisper that seemed to echo from every stone. You were never meant to see this. The altar began to crack, splitting down the center. The book burst into flames, yet no heat emanated from it. The prophecy, the warnings, the hidden knowledge, it was all being erased before their eyes. Matteo yanked Leonardo back. We have to go. They sprinted up the stone staircase, the Vatican's very foundations shaking beneath their feet. As they reached the surface, the hidden door behind them sealed shut, as if the secret had never been exposed. Breathing heavily, Leonardo looked down at the manuscript still clutched in his hands. Unlike the burning book, it had survived. The final words on its fragile pages made his blood run cold. When the last pope falls, the world shall follow. Judgment Day is upon us. Leonardo and Matteo exchanged a look of understanding and fear. Whatever they had uncovered, it was only the beginning.